Look, where are the morning people at? Okay. Okay. Now, where are my people at? That's right. So normally, 9 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to get much from me, but maybe a little scowl on my face and get away from me. But today, I'm pretty excited to be here. This is an incredible thing that we are doing under the leadership of, and I've said this many times, the finest procurement officer I've ever served with in over 34 years of service, and that's Soraya. And her leadership, you can give her a hand. Soraya does a lot of things incredibly well, but one of the things she does best is attract talent. And so I would be remiss if I didn't thank not only Carla and her team and all the industry liaisons for what they do, but Soraya's entire team. A lot of them are here, they're out there, they're all over the place. So if you would please give them a round of applause for what they do for us. Yeah, when Soraya asked me to come here, I asked her how much time I had, and she told me 20 minutes. And I said, okay. Once I get up here, you can't get me off. But what I wanted to do today was talk to you a little bit about where we've been and where we're trying to go as a department. A couple of years ago, then Secretary Johnson started with this unity of effort thing. And a lot of people are like, what does that mean? What does unity of effort mean? We were one DHS, then now we got this unity of effort thing. What does it really mean? What it really means is that if you've ever been in a tug of war, we just want people pulling in the same direction. That's all it means. And so the current secretary has said we're going to double down on pulling in the same direction. What both of them and the deputy secretary understand is you can have all the frontline folks in the world, but if you don't have a strong business unit supporting them, it isn't going to happen. And so when we built this unity of effort thing, one of the key tenets was management reform. Now you've heard that, those are good buzzwords, right? Management and reform. You hear it all the time. What does that really mean? Acquisition reform, what does it really mean? It means that our lines of business need to all work together because they all support one another. And so he looked at us and said, I want you to build a better process. I want you to build a better acquisition process. I want you to strengthen resource management. I want you to double down on IT, and I want you to improve the hiring process. Those are our integrated priorities in management, and that is pretty much encapsulates what management reform means. So I'm not going to talk about all four of them, but I am going to talk about what I call Big A acquisition reform. And so when I went to Soraya and I said the secretary is looking for us to double down on improving Big A acquisition, improving Big P procurement, I said, there's some things I think we need to do. Immediately, before I could say anything else, she starts rattling off things that we need to do. Immediately, within the first day, she comes up with this acronym, because Soraya loves acronyms. She came up with this thing called AIM. I go, what is AIM? She goes, Acquisition, Innovation, in Motion. And the reason she put the in motion part is because what I told her is, I want a plan of action. I want to do things. She knows my three favorite words are do, did, and done. My least favorite words are working, in progress. Because when I use those words, I know what they mean. I haven't been paying much attention to it. I think I'll start now. So she chose those words very carefully because we wanted to say in our words that we are going to do something, not just talk about it. Not just put it on a piece of paper, but we're actually going to make a difference in acquisition. So when you look at big A acquisition, if you're ever bored, you can go pick up a variety of GAO. GAO's not here, are they? Is the IG here? Oh, good. Good invite list, Soraya. So if you're ever bored, you can go read a variety of material on our failed acquisitions. Right? There's plenty of material out there. So we set forth to do some basic things to improve acquisition. The first was programs need documentation. So as I saw him in here. There he is, my friend Mark Brukowski. I've said this to Mark plenty of times. The first time he actually came into an ARB with me, I said to him and his team, I said, you guys may have the best, most well-run program in the entire department. But I don't know it, because there's no pieces of paper for me to measure you by. And he's like, you're right. It's all up in my head. And so we set forth across the department to make sure if a program is going to move forward, it has the documentation it means. And I'm not an administrative guy. I don't really like paperwork. But without some piece of paper, you can't measure the program. So you got to have some documentation. So now all of our programs have documentation. All the required documentation. That was set forth in MD 102. I see him out there. There he is. That he started. So we got good documentation. Next thing is a part of that documentation is cost estimates. Is that for me? Sounds like the ice cream truck is coming. I'm about to go. So, cost estimates. Every program needs a cost estimate. People seem to be interested in how much stuff costs. There seems to be a lot of interest in this town of what things are going to cost. So as a part of that documentation, all our programs now have cost estimates. And we've built a good cost estimating capability in the department within the CFO, and we're continuing to expand that to include doing independent cost estimates so that we have some IV&V, if you will, on what the program says it's going to cost versus what somebody else says it's going to cost. So that's a good thing. When you look at terms of affordability, a couple of years ago, we had programs that were completely unaffordable. And you know what I call those programs? They're dreams. They're dreams. So we've asked for realistic program affordability. So what that means is we now make the CFO sign a letter saying it's affordable. Their name's on it. Makes them a little nervous. I like that. They also put so many caveats in them that it takes a team of lawyers to understand what it says. But we're getting there on affordability. The other thing we did was we looked at, acquisition is a event-driven thing. Budgets are what? Someone said shrinking. Remember, flat is the new up. Your budget's flat, you're good. Shrinking, that's pretty good. So when we looked at how acquisition was running, it's event-driven, budgets are calendar-driven. So one of the things we wanted to do is better link the budget process with the acquisition process. So now all our programs have to submit this document to our programming folks so that we have a good sense of where the program is in terms of budget each year. So that when we submit something to the Congress, we know that what we're submitting is a funded program, not just waiting for the next acquisition decision event. I think the biggest thing we've done is build a requirements process. Remember when I told you if you want to go read failed acquisitions? Most of those failed acquisitions were because we didn't get the requirements right up front. And it's not because people weren't trying. We have this propensity in acquisition to go right to the solution. That's what we do. Rather than go through a deliberate but quick process to determine what the need is, what the capability gaps are, and how we can best work with industry to solve them. So we built this joint requirements process at the headquarters. The challenge for us now is that the underpinnings in the components aren't as robust as they need to be. It would be like saying Shariah's got this great procurement office up at the headquarters, but there's no procurement functions in the components. That's not going to work so well, right? So we're building out a requirements function. Mark and his guys are looking to build out a requirements function. TSA is looking to build out a requirements function to model themselves after what Coast Guard and others have done. And we're making progress. Y'all heard that, right? Making progress. I don't like those words. I like do, did, and done. So we've got more work to do there. But we're on our way. Even GAO gave us pretty high marks on where we are with our joint requirements process. The other piece is we've got to better link research and development with the acquisition process. So we've got this thing called the R&D IPTs, which are supposed to be component-led, S&T-supported teams in our mission areas that are prioritizing what the needs are, spending the right amount of research and development on it, and that should turn into real programs. That all sounded good and brief well, right? Let's say that's a work in progress. The new acting Undersecretary for Science and Technology, Bill Ryan, and I are going to sit down and talk about that. Talk about how do we make that a better process. The deputy has doubled down on that and told us to get it fixed. Because R&D dollars are precious. So when we spend an R&D dollar, it needs to turn into capability for our frontline operators. We can't petri dish for the sake of petri dish. So we got to keep working on that. All of those things come together to mature our Big A acquisition process. Last year, I sat in front of the Congress with GAO and the IG. That is usually a recipe for pain for one of the witnesses. I'll let you figure out which one it is. But we sat in front of the Congress, and without fail, both of them said, DHS is absolutely on the right track here. So if you need validation, that's it. Now, so we're working that end-to-end Big A acquisition process. There's one other thing we need to do, and that is for our IT programs, which are about 2/3 of our acquisitions, major acquisitions or IT programs, what do we need in IT? We need speed, right? Technology's changing as I'm standing up here. So using the acquisition process to build a national security cutter shouldn't be the same as the acquisition process to build a business system. Yet it was. So we sat down with Shariah's team, with the CIO folks, with our PARM folks, with the CFO folks, and said, how can we do this better? How can we deliver capability faster, on budget, on cost, on schedule? So you've got the CTO guys who would tell you, well, yeah, I can just tell you, if you'll just write me a check, I'll go get it. To which I said, even in Google and Facebook and all the places that you want to tell me where they do this much better than we do, they all answer 4 basic questions. The first is, what do you need? The second is, how much is it going to cost? The third is, when am I going to get it? And the fourth is, did it do what I said it was going to do? So I don't care where you are, we got to be able to answer those 4 questions. So that's foundational as we look to do these agile pilots. And they're really about more than agile and software, that agile software thing. It's about the whole ecosystem from the time I have an idea to the time I deliver that capability. And we got 5 basic goals as we look to transform how we do IT acquisition. The first is simply reducing the documentation. It takes too long with the documentation. We got a lot of redundancy in the documentation. So far we've seen preliminarily that we've reduced documentation by 34%. Now I'll tell you though, everybody likes to talk about documentation. And Mark knows this. I went to the CAE Council recently with some examples of documents that the components produced. Some of them have more signatures than were on the Declaration of Independence inside that component. Pretty much everybody inside that component was signing some of these things. And they were taking 6 months or longer to get out of the component because everybody wants a say. So one of the things we're looking at is streamlining who sees the document, and then streamlining with a tool that someone bought and built of how we can virtually coordinate faster. Because when we really looked at it, that's one of the big issues, is it takes too long to keep throwing it back over the transom. So we're looking to shrink that down. That's number 1. Number 2 is AOAs. It's one of my favorite ones. Soraya, if she'll have me, when we leave the federal government, we're going into business together and we're just going to do AOAs. Because we're only going to need to do about 1 or 2 a year. We're going to charge you about $1 million to $1.5 million to do it. And we're going to boil the ocean. Because when I look at AOAs for IT, some of them, that's what they do. And the reality of it is there's only 4 things you can do in an IT system. There's only 4 things. You can either go buy it at Walmart, you can build it yourself, you can do that open source code thing that all those geeky IT guys like. You know, I didn't realize this. Y'all know this, I didn't. That they write code and just stick it out there. They call it open source code and they're all proud of it. And so you can just go grab it. Or you can do that shared services thing or some combination thereof. Those are about the only options you got for IT. So why we're spending a whole bunch of money on AOAs when you got 4 options and it takes 1 year to 1.5 years and it ought to be taking about 3 weeks is beyond me. So we're really looking to shrink that down. Now, if there's some industry folks in here, they might be going, uh-oh. Well, Soraya and I are a little worried about it too because our business model may be falling apart when we leave here. But we got to shrink that down. That takes too long. And I don't know what we're talking about. And then the third thing is measuring success. How to measure success in an agile program. And it's more than just metrics around software development. And developing metrics, by the way, which is very hard, around adding business value. As you deliver it incrementally, what was the business value that we got? How do we measure that? But it's more than that. It's about measuring how the program is being run in an agile fashion. It's about measuring how we're engaging with the business owner. It's about measuring all that software development, and it's about measuring how we govern the program. Because Agile actually requires more governance, not less. And we've seen that. So those 4 things are what we're trying to do in terms of measuring performance. And then the last thing is the most important thing. None of it matters if we don't deliver capability to those people on that screen. All the rest of it is just for show if we don't deliver what we said we were going to deliver to the people on that screen. So those are the things we're trying to do in Big A acquisition. Now, as far as Big P goes, 2 years ago when I got into this job, I'd get a letter a week from industry, and you know what they said? They said, we don't know what DHS is doing, DHS won't talk to us, and we have no idea how to help them. And I just handed that to Soraya. I said, Soraya, this is what they're saying. She goes, just watch. So 2 years later and 175 plus engagements, they're now saying, Soraya and her team won't stop talking to us. And we know more now than we ever knew about what it is you guys need. So how did we go about doing that? First of all, exactly events like this. We set up learning events. We set up strategic conversations where we brought the secretary, the deputy secretary, component leadership to talk about mission areas and where we want to go in mission areas. We did learning events, an acquisition innovation roundtable, AIRs, where I said to her, I said, you can go have your little roundtable, but you're going to solve a problem, right? Soraya and I were in violent agreement. We're not just going to go have coffee with industry. We're going to put a problem on the table and solve it. We talked about personnel security roundtable, where we educate folks on what our requirements are. And by the way, on personnel security, if the word security is in the conversation, what's it going to be? It's going to be inconvenient. Because they're in a zero defect business. All it takes is one time we get it wrong. Just one time. And it can be catastrophic. But we've got to educate folks on what reciprocity is, what we need for suitability, what we need for fitness, all of those things, and how to go about doing it better. So she set up an industry roundtable for that. So we've done a lot of those and actually took action and fixed things. The other thing that I asked her to do, or that she came up with, I didn't ask her to do it, was she came up with this thing called the PIL. Now, y'all all know Soraya, right? I mean, is there a better acronym than the PIL? When Soraya's talking about Procurement Innovation Lab. So that Procurement Innovation Lab is a virtual lab where, again, we are putting our toe on the line every day. And what I mean by that is we're not going to go over the line, but we're going to push the line. And we've got a lot of examples. We've got 29 projects, I think, in the works right now. We've got examples of success. I want to talk to you about the example of failure. Because it's a lab. It's an innovation lab. So you would expect failure. Recently, we put out FLASH. And she knows what the acronym stands for, something about something for the homeland. Well, thank you. Yeah, that thing. And it was incredibly innovative. You know, we did videos, presentation, we did speed dating, we did a lot of virtual stuff with industry. And it was pretty remarkable. But when it came to the back end, we used the old approach. The old traditional approach. You could call it waterfall, you can call it whatever you want. The old traditional approach. When Soraya and I talked about it, she said, yeah, when you look at the back end, there's some things that didn't go right. I said, what are you talking about? Well, she said, we produced an 800-page report. That doesn't sound very innovative to me. Thankfully, I didn't have to read it. My point is that with innovation comes failure. And failure is okay. We have got to find a way to reward innovative failure in procurement. Now, don't walk out of here and say, he says it's good to fail. I'm waiting for my bonus check. What I'm saying is that the most successful people on the planet, if you go read a book, it's called, by John Maxwell, it's called Failing Forward. It's a book about the most successful people on the planet. And the book is mostly about how they failed time and time again. But they learned something. Try something different. Learn something. Try something different. Eventually, they became extremely successful. So we have to build a culture where failure is okay. Now, Soraya and I both said publicly, we own the failure. I'm happy to own it. Because people were doing their damnedest to deliver that capability for the folks who needed it so we could build those systems. We didn't get it all right. But I bet you your bottom dollar that we'll get it right the next time. Because we're going to learn from the mistakes that we made. We'll document them and we'll get better because of it. So all of you need to embrace that failure. And it's extremely hard in the federal government to try things that are new, that are risky. We don't like putting our toe on the line. It's not comfortable because we're worried. Here comes GAO. Here comes the IG. And they're certainly going to tell us what we did wrong. Let them come. Let them come. So that lab is the centerpiece of our innovation and our willingness to stand up and take risk. Now, all of that and this reverse industry day, which is incredible, by the way, 4 of these. 2 years ago, you'd have never imagined it. Now we do them on a routine basis. Now even the IRS has picked it up as a best practice. That is progress. And we'll continue to do these. But they're only as good as what you put into them. I don't know why you came here today. I don't know if someone drugged you by the ear. I don't know if you came running or not, but you're here now. So for the next 4 or 5 or 6 hours, however long it is, this is your opportunity to learn. Someone today decided to invest in each of you by sending you here because you all got full-time jobs. But they're investing in you to learn something so that the department gets better. Because at the end of the day, I'll finish where I started, which is those people on that screen. Nothing in this department gets done without folks like you. Nothing. We enable the mission of this department. Don't ever forget that. When you see that guy on the border, or you see that TSO, or you see that ICE enforcement agent, or you see that Coast Guard guy, he's able to do his job because you're doing yours. And we don't need credit for it. We don't need the glory for it. But don't ever forget that. And what I would say to the industry folks is you saw on that screen our mission statement. And it says, with honor and integrity, we will safeguard the homeland, the American people, and our values. It says we. It doesn't say the civil servants of DHS. It doesn't say the military of the Coast Guard. It doesn't say the law enforcement folks. It says we, and it says we because we can't do it without industry. We have to have industry as our partner. We have to be transparent. They have to know where we're going. So we've got to continue to work together. So to all the civil servants who are here, thank you for your service. Thank you for your public service. It's an honorable thing to be in public service. The nation owes you a debt of thanks, a debt of gratitude for coming to work each day, to do the right thing, to make things a little bit better each and every day. We are blessed to have you. It's a privilege to serve with you. Enjoy the rest of the day.